Drawing, sculpturing, decorating, arts and crafts, textile and felt processing, hunting, falconry, smithworks and jewelry. We showcase our national identity in the KazArt program.
While the first representatives of the senior generation, i.e. the artists of the 50s, painted pictures on topics and subjects peculiar to the Kazakhs, the works of the next 60s generation representatives were very different. This generation came to Kazakh fine arts in the mid-60s. Their painting style and works were becoming well known at the first exhibitions due to the novelty they brought. In general, the representatives of this generation were brave and courageous. It seemed they worked in a totally different direction compared to the way they had been taught to work. They were always in quest of something new. The main purpose of these artists was to bring life to national solutions and national techniques in the artistic sense, including both the form and content. The 60s is a conventional name given for the Kazakhstan group of artists who were well known in the 60s to the 70s of the 20th century. These years, the artists as A. Salathidin Aydbayev, Tokbolat Toguzbayev, Orolbek Nurjumayev, Bakhtiar Tabeyev, Abdi Rashid Sidikhanov, the graphic artist as Isatai Isabayev, Makum Kisamidinov, Adil Rahmanov, and the sculptors as Yerken Mirgenov and Toligen Dasmagambetov started to paint works in Kazakh fine arts in a national sophisticated composition.
Поколение художников-шестидесятников, само название, сам термин «шестидесятники» фактически становится неким...
The title of the term, the 60s, is like a sign of a new period. This new phenomenon was observed not only in fine art, but also in theater, literature, music, and in the spheres of culture and art as a whole. In those years, a new wave focused on a modern direction appearing in the world of arts. They clearly understood that it was time to establish the Kazakh National School of Fine Arts, which would have its own niche in arts. In general, it is known that the previous Kazakh fine arts of the 50s was developing based on the Russian realism school. This innovative artist aimed to find a way to develop Kazakh fine arts without the Russian realism school to build a national school. They were looking for new forms of fine art that would be different from the Russian school.
В основном преобладала в казахстанской живописи 50-х годов или предшествовавшей поры.
They shared a common goal to build a new school of Kazakh fine arts. They made joint efforts to invent a new language, techniques, and a style of Kazakh fine art. Saturation of color and painting, scales of surfaces and forms became the major features in their works. The 60s used courageous experience, giving their works a new style and new colors.
Выпускники Алматинского училища, первые поколения 40-х, 50-х годов, они наиболее талантливые.
The students of the Almaty School of Fine Arts of the 40s and 50s who graduated with honors wanted to study mainly in Moscow and Leningrad, and further in Kiev and Kharkiv, and other higher educational institutions of the Soviet Union. After graduation, they all came back to their motherland, and through Russian realism art they painted on Kazakh national topics. The 60s we are telling about also continue this theme. In other words, daily lives of the Kazakhs and the environment in which they had grown up were the motive of their works. In one word, in the 50s and 60s, the steppe, which used to be a basic theme, remained the main favorite picture of the artist.
50-е становится главным местом действия, которое разворачивается в пространстве этих картин.
They learned about the works of world-famous artists, they studied their techniques and methods. They all made impact on their works, but they could convey what they had learned and studied through national worldview and character.
Осы буын суретшілері тек қана өзіміздің жаңа тың дүние, жаңа тіл табу үшін.
These generation artists tried to make new things through learning about the works of the Western European artists and associating our national art with it to find a new language and original things.
Айтбаевқа Пикассошыл деген атақтар тағылып, немесе жаңағы кубистік мәнерде туындылар жасаса, ал Тоғысбаевты Матиске еліктеді, ал түрлі формадан тәжірибе, керемет эксперимент жасаған мүсінші Еркін Мергеновті жаңағы Ван Гогқа немесе.
In this direction, these painters were accused of imitation by many people. For example, Айтбаев, who worked in cubistic style, was called like Picasso, or Тогизбаев, like Matisse, and the sculptor Erkin Mergenov, who experimented with various techniques like Van Gogh. In the cultural evolution, the exchange of experience, connecting them to form a new process, were an old tradition.
Қалыптасқан дүние. Сондықтан да бұл суретшілер көптеген сын пікірге қарамастан өте ары қарай белсенді жұмыс жасады.
И очень интересно эту стилистику выискивать и находить в произведениях казахстанских художников. Так и у Салихиддина Айтбаева.
It is fascinating to look for the impact of world-famous brush masters in the works of Kazakhstan artists. We can view the Cubism art style looking at geometric shapes in Salihiddin Айтбаев's work named Lunch.
Очевидно, такое увлечение или заимствование приемов фавистов и как раз творчества Анри Матисса, когда в живописном полотне соединяются локальные плоскости, цветовые плоскости, которые образуют вот такую очень странную, сложную цветовую конструкцию.
He tried to draw things in various angles and in detail. And in Tokbolat Togizbayev's pictures, we observe peculiar techniques used in Henri Matisse's works. Colorful surfaces on canvas form one-color complex construction through mutual harmony. Above all, the artists of the 60s and their works depicted nature especially and in a grand style. So the works of all artists of the 60s were characterized by these features.
Живописных произведений художников-шестидесятников является особенной отличительной чертой, которая характерна для всех представителей этого поколения.
In general, at the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s, in the works of the painters, distinguished by quality changes applied. There were new monumental construction of forms and decorative coloring solutions, in sync with Kazakh handicraft, which became a novelty in the arts.
70-ші жылдардағы суретшілер, 60-ші жылдардағы суретшілер тағы да бір топ суретшілер болды олар.
In the 60s to 70s, another group of artists emerged. They had wider knowledge than the previous generation had and who could critically think about the policy the communists were implementing due to the awakening of national consciousness. They, Айтбаевs, Sariyevs, Hisameddinovs, and others who were smarter, a bit braver, started to paint Makhambet. They told us about Makhambet, who he was.
Олар Махамбеттің суретін сала бастады. Ол Махамбет кім екендігін айтты. Солай Шоқан, тағы сол сияқты көптеген ұлттық азаматтардың істерін, олардың бейнесін халыққа жақындата бастады. Одан кейін олардың бәрін.
They painted Shokan and other national citizens so that people knew more about them, their appearances and their works. There was a need for a national manner to tell about them. For this reason, Айтбаевs, Sariyevs started to adopt appropriate things from national handiwork, national traditions. Thus, they adopted coloring, combinations of a color palette and special types from national traditions.
Сөйтіп жаңағы колорит, түр-түстің үйлесімділігінің жеке бір ерекше түрлерін сол ұлттық дәстүрден алды. Оның үстінде сол кезде мынау Совет үкіметінің жаңағы саясатына байланысты мынау шетелдердегі коммунистер.
In addition, at that time, people started talking about that they wanted to get to know the communists in foreign countries, their relation to the Soviet Union policy. At the moment, they started to meet with the new independent countries as Mexico, Guatemala, Cuba, and Latin America. Our painters got to know the works of Mexican painters as Siqueira and Siribiera. They learned about their national tradition having its own peculiarities.
Солардың жұмыстарын біздің суретшілер көріп тани бастады. Олардағы жаңағы өздерінің лайықты ұлттық дәстүрді көрді қалай екенін.
Салихиддин Айтбаевтың шығармашылығының бас тақырыбы осы адам болды. Яғни суретші Салихиддин Айтбаев адамның ішіне үңіліп оның...
The main topic of Salihiddin Aitbayev's work was a human. Delving into the human soul through its spiritual and physical beauty, he brought special beautiful works to life. He tried to express unveiled secrets of every human's inner beauty. The artist painted several pictures in the genre of the portrait.
Портреті, өзінің отбасының портреті, мысалы қарындасының портреті, сондай-ақ мысалы өзінің әкесінің портретін атап өтуге болады. Жаңа айтып өткендей, мысалы Салихиддин Айтбаев адамның ішкі жан дүниесімен қатар...
For example, the portraits of Anwar Alimjanov's sister and his father. Salihiddin Aitbayev was able to express the human's inner world and psychological mood in the portrait of his father. In this work, the painter showed the image of his father looking down with a book in his hands. Here we can see the style and technique typical for the 60s. In other words, he did not paint household goods and their interiors of the Kazakh house in details on the background. Here the artist reached an appropriate scale, fullness through colors and a form.
Яғни форма арқылы суретші негізгі ауқымдыққа, негізгі жаңағы толыққандылыққа қол жеткізген.
One thing that can obviously be seen in Shaymirdin Sariyev's works, the artist's pure feeling for the character he painted. He loved the nature in every leaf of his homeland. Monumental integrity in Sariyev's works was as if telling about typical behavior of stepmen that is difficult to describe. Shepherd's Family, painted in 1969, or Fisherman, painted in 1971, and many other works prove fundamental characteristics of the artist's creative work.
Алпысыншы жылғы суретшілердің де туындыларында бұл ұлттық жанр өздігінше өрбіп дамыды. Соның ішінде Тоқболат Тоғызбаев.
This traditional genre independently developed in the artist's works of 1960. There are the artists of Tokbolat Togizbayev, Shaymirdin Sariyev, Bakhtiyar Tabeyev, Salihiddin Aitbayev, Abdi Rashid Sidikhanov painted many works in the domestic genre depicting collected images. If to talk about Bakhtiyar Tabiyev's work named Midday, we see a picture where a woman looks out of a yurt waiting for her husband. There's a samovar, interiors of the yurt, its attributes used in daily life. However, in this work, Kazakh's life and the role of a woman in daily life is described through a foreground image.
Бұл жердегі негізгі көрініс образ арқылы біздің өмірді және әйел адамның тұрмыстағы алатын орнын бейнелеген.
The artists who demonstrated Kazakhstan fine art as a specific phenomenon analyzed the complexity, beauty, and value of life in their works. There were the brush masters as Tokbolat Togizbayev and Tursin Abuov, who were recognized by their own signature among a number of innovative artists who formed a national style. They brought the culture of nomad life to the world in a secure and artistic way as their peers.
Я убеждена, что искусство шестидесятников сыграло огромную роль на...
I think that the 60s had peculiar impact on establishment and development of Kazakh fine arts. As in those years, the art of painting rose to a new level in the history of Kazakh culture.
Во-первых, это один из лучших периодов в истории национальной живописи в плане достижений, в плане новых открытий, в плане имен и вот этой величины.
Those years were successful, full of innovations, and the period when new names emerged in Kazakh fine art. As a result, these days we have talented artists who grew up following their footprints. Anyway, for me, the 60s will remain as the best representatives of Kazakhstan fine arts. Secondly, I know that the bright pages of today's art are the result of various experimental researches taken place in the 60s.
Без их значения и не состоялось бы современное искусство в лучшем его проявлении.
The 60s formed a new national style of a new content through defining particularity of epic and romantic motifs, monumental solutions, and scale forms in the structure of canvas, extended, inclined forms and color structures in their works.